Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro Movement. On today's episode, I'm going to make an argument for why, if you're interested in developing real-world movement capacities, you should think about stopping setting goals for yourself. Now, I'm going to preface this and say there are some very good reasons that I'll mention in a minute to set goals for yourself. It can definitely help with motivation and help you with tracking progress, help you with sticking to what you want to do. But there's also some downsides, and I'm going to highlight this in this episode. So the takeaway should be that while there are benefits to goal setting, you should be mindful of the drawbacks and find the balance between the two. This isn't, although it might have seemed like it at the front, a video saying, stop setting goals for yourself, they're the wrong thing to do. No. What I'm doing is making an argument for why you might want to consider doing that, but ultimately, you should weigh that argument up with the potentially good reasons to do it and then find the happy medium. So, why are goals set in the fitness industry? Because there is lots of goal setting happening in the traditional fitness industry. From my point of view, it's typically done for either one of two reasons. It's typically either done to help with motivation, right? So because we can then see progress, so we decided, I want to get to that, and therefore because I can then measure how close I am to that, because if it's a good goal, it's measurable, right? Then I can track my progress. That can help to keep me motivated. That can help to tell me if I'm heading in the direction towards that goal. I can adjust, I can iterate, and I can head there. That's a particularly good reason. Another reason, the second reason that I see this done, that is in some ways good and in some ways problematic, is it's done to help fitness trainers demonstrate to clients how good those trainers are. Now, obviously, if you're a trainer, that's a really useful thing. You need to run a business. It's good for you to be able to demonstrate to your clients that you're effective and you're doing the right thing for them. So I totally get why that happens. It has one potential downside, though, in that because trainers want to demonstrate outcomes to clients, there's an incentive to demonstrate them as quickly and as to the greatest degree possible. So we can end up starting to overemphasize this, even if there are long-term consequences to it. And I'm not going to go into that in huge detail, but the point here could be, really, really briefly, things like 12-week challenges, 6-week challenges, 8-week challenges, challengey challenges. There is an emphasis or there is an incentive there for the trainer to show the biggest possible effect for the client. So say it's a 12-week challenge and one of the components is losing fat, right? Toning down. There is an incentive for the trainer to show as much loss of fat in those 12 weeks as possible, even if that is in no way sustainable in the long term. So the client does the 12-week challenge, loses a whole bunch of body fat, thinks this is amazing, but it's been done in a way that's not sustainable, and eventually they fall off the bandwagon, they yo-yo back the other way, and they put all the weight back on, and mentally that leaves someone in a pretty low position. That's a real downside to goal setting when the goal is for the trainers to demonstrate how good they are. Okay, that's not the point of this episode, but it is tangentially related to what I'm going to get at here. The challenge with setting goals, if you want to be good at moving in the real world, is how do you define movement in the real world? Because it's this incredibly complex and varied. There's so much moving for real. Just think about climbing a tree. All the subtleties of the positions that you get into while climbing the tree is incredibly nuanced, right? As opposed to doing pull-ups, which, yeah, there's some different variations, but fundamentally, they're all just pull-ups, right? So because it's so complex, how do you measure it? So I'm like, okay, my goal is to be better at moving in the real world, but how do I measure that movement? Let's say I pick, let's say I pick a pull-up. I want to be better at climbing trees, so I'm going to pick a pull-up as my measurement. The problem here is that the pull-up doesn't measure everything. about climbing trees. So, okay, I'm going to pick something else as well. I'm going to pick my ability to do a certain skill, which is a mantle. That's more of a rock climbing skill, but let's just go with it for this analogy. So I'm going to test my ability to do mantles, but mantles aren't everything in rock climbing or tree climbing. So now I'm going to test my ability to do a tripod get up onto a tree branch and then stand up. Well, that doesn't do it either, because there's this other thing or this other thing or this other thing. The problem is that because we're too varied, no matter what we pick to try and measure and set a goal about, I want to be able to do X number of pull-ups, or I want to be able to mantle so many times in a minute, or I want to be able to mantle this particular hard mantle while out rock climbing, or whatever it is, right? No matter what you pick, there's a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of elements that's going unmeasured. And you can't, and so then you go, oh, well, let's just pick a million different measures, but that's completely impractical, right? Because you're just measuring your entire life. So we go down the other route, which is, okay, well, let's pick some surrogates for this, right? So let's decide that what we are going to do is we're going to measure the pull-ups, we're going to measure the ability to mantle, and we're going to measure using a tripod to get from a support on a tree branch actually up onto the tree branch. The problem here is that as soon as those become your measures, then the things that are best at making you better at those measures are practicing those things. The SAID principle says specific adaptations to imposed demands get better at what we do, and only very specifically to what we do. So then there's a perverse incentive to do more and more and more of just those things. And so you forget about the breadth of movement that we actually require to be good movers all around, and we just get at those things, and you end up developing all these blind spots. And this happens all the time in the traditional fitness industry, where people, they come in and their goals are like, okay, I want to be able to play with my kid all day. I want to be able to carry the wet load of washing comfortably out to the clothesline. And I've got chickens. Oh yeah, and we got to buy chicken feed for them, and they're 20 kilo bags and they're really awkward to carry. So I want to be strong enough to carry those. And the trainer's like, okay, cool. Well, we're in a gym, so we're going to do a bunch of deadlifts and stuff. And we're going to measure your progress with deadlifts. So ultimately you just end up getting better at deadlifting and not actually getting better at the picking the kid up off the ground and the carrying the wet load of washing. You do get a bit better at it because there are some crossovers that at the margins of the SAID principle, there is enough crossover that things do bleed over and make you better. But you'd be far better off if you practiced a really broad suite of movement, because you get more crossover with the things that you actually want to be good at. So the goal setting here, the problem is that as soon as you make your goal in that instance, oh, well, I need to be better at deadlifting because I'm going to pick up these heavy bags of chicken feed, that you accidentally are then incentivized to do more and more and more deadlifting, because the best way to get better at deadlifting is to do lots of deadlifting. And so you get better at deadlifting, and you get better at the components of picking up and carrying the chicken feed that have crossover with deadlifting, but you don't get any better at the other components. And so you miss the mark, which in this instance is, yeah, okay, you build the strength to literally pick it up off the ground, but you don't get any better at the fact that the chicken feed is a really awkward object to grab. You don't get any better at the fact that the chicken feed starts much lower to the ground if it's lying flat on the ground. You don't get any better at the fact that you actually need to carry the thing once it's up there. And probably the most effective and easiest way to carry it is over your shoulder, and deadlifting does nothing to teach you how to get the chicken feed onto your shoulder, as an example, right? So the problem here is that if we set goals, if we want really broad movement outcomes, we can't measure that breadth practically. But if we pick some surrogates for it, we can accidentally end up chasing the surrogates instead. So we have to find a way to find a fine balance between, yes, having goals and measuring progress against them is useful for motivation, is useful for knowing if we're heading in the right direction, but it can also lead us in totally the wrong direction when ultimately those goals are all surrogates for the real thing. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. If you did, feel free to give us a like or a subscribe. If you'd like to get in touch, ask a question, contribute to this conversation, we do definitely answer viewer questions, then hit us up at ideanthro.com/connect. If you'd like to know more about our movement practice, go to ideanthro.com/movement. And if you'd like to come down and check out our gym in Oxley, Brisbane, maybe sign up, you can come for a free trial. You can come to ideanthro.com/free-trial. Okay, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time.